I'm just gonna get straight into this. Chelsea nil, Fulham nil. Poor performance all round, some positives, some negatives. Good debuts from Enzo and Madueke, but the same story with Havertz and Mount. This was the game we should have won. Poor lineup, but in the circumstances where, unfortunately, Zakaria and Kovacic are injured, so there's nothing much we could have done in midfield. So, this is my player ratings. We start with Kepa. Kepa had a decent all-round game, even though there wasn't much for him to do. Made some good saves, but distribution was a bit shaky. Did his job, to be fair. I rate him 7. Now, Reece James. I rate him 7 as well. He looked bright considering he was back from injury, but needs more time to be 100% again. Did okay against Willian on the wing, even though Robinson and Willian were basically cooking him, especially with no help in the midfield. So he did well under the circumstances. Was sad to see him subbed off, but there was no way of him playing 90. Centre-backs Thiago and Badiashile, both I rate as 8 out of 10. Both composed as usual, both were very solid in the back and never looked like conceding. Both were playing very good balls in as well. Just unlucky Havertz was offside for a lot of them. Another clean sheet for this partnership. Left back Cucurella. I personally rate him 6 out of 10 because there wasn't much he could have done with that pivot of Enzo and Gallagher, so he was isolated at the left. He did do well to the extent against Deckard over Reed, but offered nothing in attack. He's a lot slower than I thought. Was always going to be replaced if I'm being honest. Centre mid Enzo played really well under the circumstances. It wasn't his best position, but he was really resilient and dictated play quite well. Good positions as well. Enzo is the box-to-box player we've been waiting for. Solid defensively and some good passes in attack. I do think if we still had Jorginho, we would have definitely lost this game. Was very nimble on the ball and bossed the midfield. Best player on the pitch, so I give him a 9. Future star in the making. Next up, Conor Gallagher. I do think he did better than what people may say because he did offer something in the midfield, defensively and attacking wise. Corners were rubbish, but he did play some good balls in, especially for the one chance for Dasher Fofana. Made a few silly fouls but showed a lot of aggression at least. Not his best position either, so I think I'll give him a 5. A lot better than anticipated. Next up we have Mason Mount. By far the worst player on the pitch today. Overhit passes again, lost the ball multiple times, did not offer anything in attack, was just running around like a headless chicken. I have no idea why Potter insists on playing him. I don't think he did anything good this game, so I give him a 0. He should have been hooked off at half time. Maybe, just maybe Loftus-Cheek would have done better. Or even Carney Chukwuemeka. We're playing him into form and it's not working clearly. Beyond a joke at this point. I don't know if Potter is to blame for this because positionally he looked like he was playing up front with Havertz at times in almost like a 4-4-2 formation. He does like to drop back a bit, so it's a bit weird seeing him up like that. So it isn't his fault. I changed my mind, I'll give him a 1 this time. Next we have Ziyech. At his best position at right wing this time. Did okay considering I assumed that he may have that PSG incident in his mind all the time. But he played like a professional today, he's much better than Mount. Some good balls in it with his left foot, almost set up Havertz for a goal, unlucky he was offside. Should have got at least 3 assists. Had some good chances but he was never going to score on his right, to be honest. So I'll be generous and I'll give him a 7. Next we have Mudryk at left wing. Very, very quiet today. He did not look like himself, which Potter confirmed that he wasn't well apparently. So his performance makes sense if I'm being honest, and that's what got him subbed at half time. I'll give him a 5 to be generous. And that takes us to Havertz up front. Next worst player on the pitch after Mount was very, very clumsy on the ball. Wasted a lot of chances and was offside quite a lot. He should have finished 2 chances, especially the one where he chipped the keeper. Had a lot of time on the ball to finish that off. He just tries to be way too clever. Eventually he was just getting in the way of players on the ball, was not picking up play well and was impeding Datra Fofana and Madueke on the right. I'll be generous and I'll give him a 3 because he did make some good runs even though they weren't the best of runs that were eventually offside. Made himself available but did not finish the chances. That's what cost us today. Needs to be dropped by Fofana the next game. Aubameyang must be fuming at this, and I honestly don't blame him. Moving on to the subs. First sub was Nolly Madueke, who I thought was very, very bright on the ball and set the pace in the second half. It was unlucky that he had Azpilicueta to help in the second half, also considering Havertz was constantly running into him, and Azpilicueta takes 10 years to overlap. No options in the midfield either because Enzo and Gallagher had to stay composed in their positions. Mount was a ghost as well, to be honest, so Madueke was left isolated. Did well under the circumstances, but I'll give him 6. Next we have Sterling, who I thought wasn't as good as people thought he was. Did not offer much creativity wise because he wasn't passing, he was running aimlessly, and he lost the ball quite a lot. Couldn't control the ball for his life. Also ran like a headless chicken, if I'm being honest. Can't really blame him because he's fresh from injury, so I'll give him a 5. Now we move on to Azpilicueta. I thought he did more harm than good. He wasn't good attacking wise, was not good defensively, left a wide gap behind for Thiago Silva. William made the most of that, which almost left our defence exposed. Attacking wise did not help Madueke enough. You can't really blame him because he's aging obviously, but Malo Gusto can't come any sooner. So I'll give Azpilicueta a number 4. Finally, we move on to Dr. Fofana, who I thought was, next to Madueke, our best substitute that came on. He looked very bright up front compared to Havertz, even though Havertz was impeding him. Considering this was his Premier League debut, he did really well under the circumstances. In a way, he does deserve his chances ahead of Aubameyang. I do think, however, he should have done better with those chances, especially the one where he went round Leno. Although Havertz might miss, he was open in the centre, but it was very unlucky from him, considering he was closest to goal, compared to every other player on the pitch. You can argue with the Enzo chance as well. Nevertheless, he showed a lot of promise, and I do think he should be ready for the next game. I do think Havertz needs to be dropped for him, for the sake of his future as well. It just goes to show Potter needs to be making these changes as soon as possible. I don't think Havertz and Mount should be sold, but I do think they should be dropped. The more the competition, the better they'll perform. If there's still no improvement, then maybe it might mean we cash out on both of them in the summer. So yeah, shameless overall, disappointing, and it's hard to believe we waited 2 weeks for this. João Felix should be back in the next game. That should mean Havertz could be dropped, but it depends on the position that he plays in, because I don't think he'll be as good as in a 9. Because in Potter's system, the 9 tends to be isolated as well, so it may not necessarily work out unless there's someone behind him. Maybe Potter experiments with Ziyech behind him, but I doubt that. And hear me out, Loftus-Cheek may do well in this position, but we obviously need Zakaria behind to cover him as well. Obviously Enzo Fernandez dictating players on from behind. So yeah, looking forward to Joao's return. Hopefully my next video is a lot more positive than this one, so yeah, thank you for listening and stay tuned.